Welcome everyone to Mastering DevOps-Driven Data Integration with FME. I'm excited to be joined today by Stuart. Stuart, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Elizabeth. Yeah, my name's Stuart Harper. I oversee the cloud group at Safe Software, so FME Hub, Flow Hosted, and I also work a lot on FME Flow. And the team have been working hard over the last year on FME Flow, actually, and all the DevOps workflows. So that's what we're here today to talk about.
Excellent. All right, yeah, Stuart's got some awesome content prepared for us today. We're going to be taken through an introduction to FME and DevOps, followed by a live demo that Stuart's put together. And then we'll go through a conclusion and also some next steps and resources to help you get started. And then at the end, we'll have about 15 minutes remaining for some Q&A. So definitely throughout, get any questions you might have for Stuart in that questions panel.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, as I mentioned, the questions panel is located on the bottom right there. We also have the chat, so keep letting us know where you're tuning in from there. We'll have a poll coming up very shortly, so that'll be in the polls tab as well. And then if you do have any audio or video issues throughout, we have that help button on the bottom left side, and share your emoji reactions with us during the webinar as well with that button there in the middle. If you'd like to download the slide deck to follow along live, you can also do that. You'll see a button on the top right that has a little download icon, or under apps and handouts, it's found there as well. All right, and with that, we will kick things off with our poll here. So if everyone wants to head on over to that polls tab, we'd love to know, where are you at with your organization in your DevOps journey? So quite a few different options there. We'll get everyone.
Yes, interesting to see.
Yeah.
Relatively kind of mature, not technology, almost culture is DevOps now. It's been around probably the best part of a decade. So sure there'll be a wide range kind of here. We do have a DevOps team at Safe. Being a software company, you would expect that, but
cool. It looks like most people have voted now. A lot of folks in either the early stage or the exploration stage seems to make up the largest chunk here. So will be a lot of opportunity to learn today.
Nice.
Excellent. All right, I'll close that down here. And just a quick introduction to FME if you are newer to our software here. So we offer flexible deployment options. We have FME Form, the authoring environment where you build your data integration workflows. And then we also have automation provided through FME Flow, which is deployed on-premise or in your private cloud environment. And then in addition, we have added unrivaled data support for many different data types over the years. So as you can see, we support over 500 different formats at this point. We've started off with GIS at the beginning, and we've been recently added generative AI, cloud native, AR, VR, indoor mapping. Anything to add there, Stuart, on your end?
I mean, what don't we support, honestly, in terms of data formats now? I think, broad kind of range through gaming, indoor mapping. We've got that geospatial, really kind of comprehensive coverage there. But then we also have more general kind of, database support and tabular data support. So I haven't kind of found the format in a while that FME can't read, honestly. So yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Absolutely. All right, at this point, I'll get Stuart and I to turn off our webcams just to save on some bandwidth for the upcoming demos.
Great.
And with that, I'll hand it over to Stuart.
Great, thanks, Elizabeth. Yeah, so let's talk about DevOps. What is DevOps? So DevOps is a lot of things to different people. So our definition kind of today is DevOps is all about bridging the often kind of separate worlds of software development and IT operations. It's kind of about building a bridge between these two groups of people that historically have operated in isolation. So the main goal of DevOps is to deliver software faster and more reliably. That's the crucial thing. So you really want to kind of not just get the velocity, but you want to get that reliability as well. You want to be able to trust your deployment pipelines so that you can deploy code on an extremely regular interval. To pull this off, there's a few things you need. The first is you need to foster kind of a culture of collaboration and communication, and this is culture based, but it's also tooling as well. You can get integration with things like Slack and notification services. It's all about providing an environment where there's lots of visibility for both the dev and ops team as well, so they can gain trust in each other. And how we do this is through continuous integration and delivery. So really our goal here is we want to be able to write our code, have our code tested, and have our code deployed between probably multiple environments, staging and production and development, without any hiccups. So as an organization, we start to build trust in these workflows. And the rate of change now in our organizations, we have to be able to respond to things. When generative AI came out this year, companies you saw all over the world, they were pushing out changes and updates in a matter of weeks or months after. And about that velocity, it can mean different things for different people. Some people, after they've written code or business logic, they need to be able to deploy within minutes. For others, maybe weeks is fine or months is fine. So it doesn't mean that you're kind of striving to be able to deploy within seconds. It really depends on your organization's needs. Finally, the final kind of core principle of DevOps is all about treating infrastructure as code. And so we'll go into this in a little bit more detail later. But this is essentially, you want to take that installation, treat it as, say, a YAML file or as code. And what this enables you to do is deploy your infrastructure in a highly repeatable way, highly transparent way. And this brings with it the reliability. Okay, so let's dive a little bit deeper into the key pillars of DevOps. These are the things we're going to talk about in depth today. So first, we've got continuous integration. So this is all about automating the merging of code from all of your developers, or in FME's context, your workspace builders, to a main branch. So when you work in kind of in a in a DevOps culture, you're going to have source control, probably something like Git. That's what we're going to talk about today. And you want to be able for your team to collaborate on the same code, collaborate on the same FME Flow workspace, workflows, or FME Form workspaces. Next is you want continuous deployment. So you've written that code, your team have all worked on the same thing, you've QA'd it, it's passed tests, and then you want to auto-release that code through the different environments, from dev, where you've built everything out, through to staging, and then finally through to develop production, where you deploy into that live environment. This is not easy to do, this part, and this is where kind of I would say the bulk of DevOps kind of rests on this continuous deployment. Finally, and some may pull this configuration management part under continuous deployment, but I wanted to pull it out. This is really, really important, and it's something that we've really worked on with FME over the last year. And this configuration management, what it means is when you deploy your logic between your staging and your production environments, for example, there's really kind of no way that you're going to be writing to the same database in staging as production. You're not going to be using the same AWS account in staging and production. So what you need to be able to do is when you migrate those workflows, you need to be able to seamlessly switch out which database you're using, which AWS connections you're using, which Google Drive connections you're using. And that's all about configuration management. And we talk about that later in the presentation a lot. And then the final part, which we'll talk about in more depth, and I'll show you some links, is infrastructure as code. So yeah, managing data centers, software and hardware using these YAML files and JSONs instead of manually doing installation. So, this is kind of an interesting thing to talk about, and this is where we start to diverge from maybe what's typically out there on the internet, which is all about code and software development. So what's the benefits of kind of combining DevOps with no-code data integration or a platform like FME? Well, the first is efficiency and simplicity. So you've got the efficiency and the reliability of DevOps, but then you've got the speed of no-code tools. So you can build these workflows very, very quickly with FME, both on the form side and the flow side, using a drag and drop interface. And then once you've built them, you can then deploy them in a very, very efficient and reliable way. And to build on that, it's user-friendly meets technical. So you're marrying kind of the GUI front end of FME with the robust back-end processes that DevOps brings, and that's really powerful. Next is enabling teams to do more. Over the years, we've heard a lot about it's hard for teams to work on the same workflows. Well, now we're starting to make that easier. So we want teams to have basically full visibility into the deployment pipeline, but also bridge the gap between the technical experts and everyday users. So you've got the extremely technical DevOps team, and how do you bring the team together with the kind of team that builds out those workflows? And we have now tooling on our side that can enable this. And the next is bringing those FME workflows, bringing those data integration workflows alongside the other apps. So I'm sure many of you out there as organizations have DevOps processes already. You're deploying software apps, mobile apps, whatever you're deploying, you can now bring FME workflows alongside those other processes and kind of integrate everything, which is really nice. So yeah, I mean, this is really a big message as we start this presentation. FME really does offer a rich set of tools for seamless DevOps integration now. There is a better way. We've got coverage in the continuous integration part, the continuous deployment part, the testing part, and the infrastructure as code part as well. So what we're going to do next is we're going to look at each section, each pillar in more detail. So continuous integrations up first, and we're going to dive into how FME now has coverage in these areas in FME 2023. So most of what you're going to see today, I'm not going to keep saying which build this is in. We're talking about FME 2023. FME 2023.2 is out, I think, December 5th. And we are still pushing minor bug fixes and changes here. So that's probably the release that you want to go with if you want to get the full benefits of the DevOps workflows. So let's talk about continuous integration. So as a recap, this is all about automating the merging of coding or workspace building from all the authors or developers to a main branch. So how do we do this? Well, first we need to get our files, our workflows into a source control. So we're going to use Azure DevOps today, which you can see here on the right. This is Azure repositories, but this is Git underneath, and so we're going to be kind of talking in the context of Git today. And you've always been able to store and track your FME workflows in a source control, actually. So in this example, I've got a data folder, and we'll show you some more detail. I've got my Azure pipelines in a pipeline folder. I've got my FME Flow Projects under projects, and then I've got my workspaces stored in the source control. So I just have this source control mirrored locally, and then I'm just saving my files into it, my workflows into it, just as if it's a normal disk, basically. So the key thing that we've improved on, and one of the big problems that people are running into, was it's always been very, very hard to resolve merge conflicts that come up in a pull request. So if multiple people are working on a workspace and they're changing the same part of the workspace, how do you resolve those merge conflicts? You can't do that in GitHub like you can with code with a pull request and look at the code. So what you had to do was open the workspace and literally compare them next to each other and go through and look. So this is the big problem we've solved to kind of supercharge the continuous integration. We now have a tool that integrates with Git called Workspace Compare Tool, and I'll show you in the demo this in more detail. But the long and short of it is this tool, what it does is you can configure Git so it's watching to see if there's any merge conflicts in a .fmw file, and if there is, it will automatically open up this tool and it will show the branch and the main line that you're merging into in the left and the right, and then you can compare and you can resolve the conflicts and save, and it will then commit the change. So this is a really, really powerful tool to enable you to kind of work as a bigger team on workspaces. The next up is the automated testing. So this is a really important part of continuous integration, and this could kind of fall under continuous deployment as well. But imagine you've built your workspaces in development. You want to move them up to staging. How do you check that things are working? Well, you can do manual tests, of course. Maybe you publish to staging and then do manual checks. But you can also build out scripts using the CLI, which we'll see in a second. So you could do things like run a workspace and expect a certain result. You could check if the engines are running. There's a health check CLI call. So you can start to build automated testing into your DevOps pipelines now using the CLI. And let's imagine you run a job from the DevOps pipeline and the job fails. The integration with automated alerts, this is more from the DevOps side. So you can configure Azure DevOps or Jenkins or whatever you're using to send a Slack notification or send an email or whatever if there's an issue. So that's also very important as well for continuous integration. So the whole team has visibility into any issues immediately. The other thing that kind of enables you to support automating testing is you can run multiple environments, staging, production development, say, and the licenses for the secondary environments, the staging, the development licenses are not full price. Okay, so that's the testing side. We'll look at and talk about that in a little bit more detail when we do the demo. Next up, we've got continuous deployment. So as a recap here, continuous deployment, this is the practice of automating the release of the tested code to production to ensure, a fast, reliable delivery of code. So what we have to deal with here is the multiple environments, the deployment through the multiple environments, and you want the configuration management as well. So the first thing that's going to enable you to do automated deployment is projects in FME Flow. So these have had a big overhaul this year, and what we've added is full nested dependency support. So what do I mean by this? Well, in previous versions of FME, if you added a works automation to a project, it would add in just the workspace, and then you'd migrate the project and the automation wouldn't run because the workspace needed the web connections, database connections, packages, now deployment parameters as well. So you would have to manually figure out what all of these different bits were that the automation needed and add them to the project manually. Now all you need to do is add the automation in, and we'll traverse the full nested dependency tree and we'll add everything in that you need. So then when you do the migration to the other environment, you can guarantee that that workflow is going to work. What that also means is you can set up your project once. So let's say you want to create a DevOps pipeline. You can set up your project once. You can add 5 automations to it, let's say, in a stream. And then as the users work on the automations and maybe they're going to add more workspaces or delete a workspace or add reliance on an S3 connection, the project will automatically update. The user doesn't have to go in and add things. So you can kind of set the project at once. You can script against moving that project And so, yeah, this is really kind of key part of the DevOps story. And we'll see this in the demo shortly. The next is FME Flow Projects import preview. So another thing that people talked about a lot is when they imported a project into their other environment, and this is kind of doing a manual import, there was an element of crossing your fingers and hoping, because there was no transparency. You didn't know what was in the project. You couldn't see before what was in the project at all. So now when you import a project, you can actually do a preview. So you can preview the content in the project. It'll show you if the content's new, if it's going to overwrite when we do the import. And then you can't see here, but on the second page of the wizard, you can also choose to remove content. Obviously, we're now kind of including all of the nested dependencies, but when you do the import, you might not want to import the deployment parameters, the web connections, the database connections, the users, the tokens. So anything that's environment specific, you can exclude on that next screen. And again, I'll show you that in the demo. So this, if you're doing a manual import, is really, really good. And even if you're building out automated processes, it's good to do it manually to start, just so you can see what's going on. And I saw lots of thumbs up there, so that's great. Next, we've got the FME Flow CLI. And so this is really, really nice, basically, for working with the FME Flow REST API. It's a wrapper around the REST API. And yes, you could call the REST API from, this is Azure Pipelines or Jenkins or wherever you are, but it's quite hard to call a REST API from a bash script. But you can see here on the right, all you need to do is get the Flow CLI executable, you log in with your correct details, and then you can start using the CLI here to upload a project from the GitHub repository. So I'll show you some more detail again, but just think now, if you're using and interacting with the REST API from within bash scripts or any kind of scripting, you can now call the CLI directly. The final part and the key thing with regards to continuous deployment is obviously flow security and access control. You've got your production environment, you've got your staging environment. The nice thing about having an automated DevOps workflow is you can essentially lock down access to the production environment completely. No one needs to log in because everything can be automated in the deploy to production. But even if you do need to grant access to some people, there's full kind of role-based access control on Flow. And we also integrate with identity providers like Azure AD. So you wouldn't even need to kind of manage logins on the Flow side either. Okay, so next piece is configuration management. So this is another big piece that went into FME Flow, and this is the deployment parameter store. And what the deployment parameter store is it's a way for you to centralize basically parameters across the entire FME platform. So think of it like this. You can create parameters in the deployment parameter store. For example, a parameter, maybe it's called environment, and in production it has the value prod, and in staging it has the value staging. You can then, as you see in this workbench screenshot here, you can use these parameters throughout Workbench. You can set them in web connections. There's a macro down here. You can use them everywhere in Workbench. You can also use them in automations. And then when you move these workflows between the environments, the workspace or the automation will automatically pick up the deployment value that's set in each environment. So if it's in prod, it will pick up the value prod, and in staging, it will pick the value staging up. So this means you can seamlessly move these workflows between environments, and you don't have to worry about going in and changing the web connection or the database connection on the parameter. This is, again, a huge time saver, and I'll show you it in action in a second. Note, this is actually good if you only have one FME Flow deployment as well. You don't need to have 3, because the other use case for it is you can basically create one parameter. Maybe it's, I don't know, environment again, and then you can use this parameter through all of your different workspaces, all of your different automations, And then if you need to update the value, you can just do it in one place, not having to go into every workspace. So this is a really great use case for this as well. Okay, infrastructure as code support. We're not going to get into this in the demo. I just want you to know if you want to streamline your FME Flow deployment, we have Terraform scripts, CloudFormation scripts, Azure ARM scripts, and Kubernetes scripts now as well. And you can access those in the links at the end of the presentations. All right, here we go. Let's get into the live demo. So I've just thrown a whole bunch of things at you there, various different components. What I want to do now is kind of tell a story of migrating a workflow through development, staging, and production. And I kind of want to show you how all of those pieces glue together. What we're going to do here is we're going to migrate a workflow between multiple environments. So this workflow is going to have two components to it. One is a workspace that we're updating. Two, we're going to update an automation as well. We're going to be using Azure DevOps to migrate the workflows in an automated way between environments, and we're going to use deployment parameters as well. So this is what the kind of branching diagram looks like that we're going to walk through here. So apologies if this is a little complex, but it was the only way I could kind of think to explain it. But what we've got here is we've got a master branch, and this master branch is tied to an FME Flow hosted deployment called production. The staging branch is tied to a Flow hosted server called staging. So two completely different versions of Flow. And then we've got feature branches down here where we kind of do our development, and we have a third server there for that development FME Flow. So what we're going to do is we're going to first look at the development side of things. So we're going to assume we're here. So we've branched off staging, and we're adding an update to a workspace and an FME Flow project because we're updating an automation. Once we've made that change, in the future, we're then going to merge into staging and auto deploy to staging, and we're going to merge into the master branch there at the top with the black icon, and we're going to deploy there. Okay, so what's the first steps? First thing we need to do is set up the deployment parameters in development. And then we're going to show you how to use those deployment parameters in the workspace. We're then going to update the automation, and we're going to then set up and view the project as well. Okay, so here are my three environments. They are identical. The only thing you can use to differentiate them is the URL up here. So we've got development, staging, and production. And we've also got Azure DevOps here, and this is our repository for Azure DevOps. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go under connection and parameters, and we're going to look at the deployment parameters. So I've got two deployment parameters here, one called environment and one called S3 SkyTrain bucket connection. So the S3 SkyTrain bucket connection, what's that doing is I have two AWS accounts, one for dev and staging and one for prod, and I want us to seamlessly switch between those AWS accounts when I migrate my workflows. I also have some, just for double kind of fail safe, I've named my buckets in S3 with a staging or a prod prefix as well. So I want that to change as I publish through environments. So this is great. I've got my two deployment parameters. Let's now have a look in Workbench. So this is what the workspace looked like on the staging branch. I'm going to add these two connections in here. I've got the S3 connector, the JSON fragmenter. So let's have a look in here. Actually, before I do that, I want to show you, you can now flip between FME flows very, very easily and essentially connect to an FME flow in here. So I'm going to sync that there. And when I sync that, you can see there's my two deployment parameters over here. So I have access to my two deployment parameters here, and you can see they're staging and SkyTrain staging. So then I can start using these deployment parameters all over my workspace. So if I go in here, you can see here I'm using the S3 SkyTrain bucket connection here. which I can access through here. And I'm also in a macro here, I'm using the environment one. So this is going to form the text staging dash Skytrain dash project. And when I move to prod, that's automatically going to resolve to prod dash Skytrain dash project. So the other thing I've done is I've actually updated the feature reader here, and I've set the cache to be 24 hours. We were having some problems with performance, so by enabling the cache, I hope to speed things up here. And this one's important, just to remember. So I'm going to save that, and I'm actually going to have a look and show you here where I am. So I'm actually on the feature branch here, and I've got this workspace now with the changes ready to be staged. Before I do that, what I want to do is I want to go and show you the automation I've got on here as well, and also show you the project. So we've got a pretty simple automation here. If I go here, and basically the automation is referencing that workspace that we just had. And so very simple automation, but we're going to add this automation to the project. We're not going to add the workspace, we're going to add the automation. And we want to migrate everything in this automation between environments. So if I go to projects here, I've already got this project set up, but I'm going to actually just remove this because I want to walk you through adding another item here. So we have a new interface here. You can search for all of the different types. And you can search here as well if you have a lot. So I'm going to add in this automation here, and we can see all of the dependencies are automatically included here. We've got the deployment parameters here, we've got the connection here, and we've even got the package as well. So I'm going to click add items here, and I can also view dependencies here as well. So obviously after you've added, you still want to be able to view the dependencies. So you can see here, I've got the package deployment parameter connections. So complete transparency here, that's the goal. So you can see what your project contains. But I just want to show you here what actually happens when I make the update. So I'm going to click on the feasibility study chaining. Note, I can navigate directly to the item now by clicking on there. And let's add another workspace in here. So I'm going to add earthquake extrusion here, just a sample workspace. And you see here, I could also actually set this to be a deployment parameter as well. So if I wanted this to change per environment, I could set this in here as well, which is really powerful. I'm going to leave this for now. I'm going to add this in here. I'm going to save this. And then we're going to go back to our project, update the page, click view dependencies. And you can see now, without me doing anything, earthquake extrusion is now included. So if you'd scripted against this project with the CLI, this would now automatically be picked up. I don't want that in there actually, so I'm just going to show you the reverse. I'm going to delete that. I'm going to save it. I'm going to close that. And we do have to refresh the page at the moment, but that's okay. We're going to go view dependency, and now that workspace is gone. Okay, so that's the project. We're going to bump the version on this project to 1.4. We've made a change. We're going to click save here, and we're going to download this project. I'm going to download this here. I have to call it a specific name. Let's call it that. And I am going to include the sensitive information. Click export, and that's been downloaded locally now. So we're going to use that in a second. Okay, excellent. Let's flip back here. So we've set up our deployment parameters. I've shown you the workflows of migrating. We've made an update to the automation, and we now have the project that we're going to script against here. Okay, so what's next? Next is deployment to staging. So we want to automatically deploy these changes to staging. So what do we need to do there first? First thing we need to do actually is add the project that I've just downloaded to the GitHub repo, but we're going to merge into the staging branch here now. And there's actually going to be a merge conflict because remember that feature cache that we set. someone has also created a bug fix, and they've also updated that feature cache on the feature reader. So we should see the compare and merge tool open to help us resolve that merge conflict. And once we've resolved that, we can then push up to the staging environment, and that will use the Flow CLI in collaboration with Azure Pipelines to deploy those workflows. So let's get started. We're going to use the compare and merge tool, Azure Pipelines, to automate the deployment to staging. And then we're going to import the project from the staging branch directly. Okay, before I do that though, first thing I need to do is I need to take the project that I've just downloaded, and this is my GitHub repo here. So I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to add that in. And we should see now in Git that I've actually staged two things. I've staged the workspace and the FS project. So I'm going to do git add star git commit -m added project and workspace. Okay, and now what we're going to do, we're going to check out to the staging branch now. But before I merge, what I want to show you actually is just what the manual process looked like. So I want to show you what it's going to be like. I won't do it, but I want to show you. Oh, hang on a second, let me hop back here to my live demo. I want to show you what it looks like with the quick, the import preview. So we're going to go on import here, and I'm importing a project here just to kind of show you what it looks like rather than scripting it. And here is the project that we just downloaded. So you see we have quick import here, and we also have preview import. So quick import's the old way, it just basically does an import of whatever you have in the project and it does everything. But with preview import, what you can do now is you can see what's been imported here. So we can see what's new, we can see what's been overwritten. And this screen actually in .2 is also going to show you whether it's a dependency or if it's kind of a top level item as well. So you'll be able to clearly see whether it's a dependency or not. We can filter by type, we can filter by action as well. Obviously some projects have 2 things in them and others have 300. So we have pagination and we have search as well. We can control what will be if we include items that are going to be overwritten or just new items. And then here's the screen where you're going to choose to exclude environment specific types. So you can exclude connections, deployment parameters. What else can you exclude? Resource connections as in 2023.2, users, tokens as well. So let us know if you want to see anything else added in here, but I think we have really good coverage now of everything that's kind of environment specific. And then I'm going to go continue, and this is just the final screen. So I could import that project now and it would import. We're going to script this and do it in an automated way, so we're going to leave that for now. But yeah, that's what that looks like in there now. Okay, so I've added my changes here. So let's see where we're at now. We're on the staging branch. So what we need to do now is merge. So we're going to do git merge feature add S3 connector. Okay, so what we're merging in here is the changes we've made to the project and the workspace into the staging branch. Okay, look, it's launching FME Workbench to merge. So it's seen that there's a merge conflict with a file called FMW, and this has automatically opened here to show me the merge conflicts. So let's have a look at this. Let me talk you through this. On the left, we've got the staging branch. On the right, we've got the feature branch. So purple things here are new. So these things that have been added, there's no conflict, and we can move those across. The yellow thing here, let's have a look at that. Some things come up as a conflict. So if I click here, I can see that there's a merge conflict here on this cache timeout. Remember, I set it to 24 hours thinking I was doing a good thing. Well, actually, someone else had already patched a bug fix and updated that to 8 hours. they knew what we're doing. Let's assume that. So we're actually going to take the 24-hour value there. Okay, so what I need to do here is I'm going to select the purple things here by kind of shift clicking, and I'm going to copy those to the left. And I actually need to copy the bookmark manually. We might look into changing that. Anyway, so we copied that across. Now, we don't want to leave that feature reader one there, so I'm going to resolve that. Yes, and that failed. And if I go, that is fixed actually now, that crash. Git add star. Oh, actually, let's do a git status so you can see. So these have been modified, F and W. So we'll do a git commit -m fix merge conflict. Okay. Okay, so now we do a git status and it should be clean. Okay, so now I can do git push origin staging. So we're going to push our changes up to the staging environment. Before I do that, let's go to Azure Pipelines. Nothing's running in here at the moment, and we've got a no project in here either in our staging environment. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to push this now. And we should see if I update this page, this script is now running. So let's go have a look at this script, click edit. This is the script I kind of showed you earlier, but it's installing the Flow CLI, logging into the staging URL, and then it's using the FME Flow Projects upload CLI call to upload from the GitHub repo up to up to the staging environment. So I could have actually gone straight from, I could have downloaded and then uploaded. I could have gone straight from dev up to staging, but I wanted to stage in the GitHub repo, so I have it in source control so I can roll back and things like that. So if I click on Azure Pipelines now, it says that staging script has run. So if I go in here, click update, fingers crossed, there it is. And today at 8:35, that's when I made the edit to the project. And we can see we're on version 1.4, and we can see all of our dependencies have been brought across as well. Okay, let's have a quick look at the CLI. This is where it resides. It's not within the Flow installer, it's on GitHub, linked to at the end of the presentation. But you can see, let me show you documentation, all of the different calls that we have in here. You can list projects, repositories, you can run workspaces. So this is where you could start to build out a kind of a scripted automated test suite where you're running workspaces, checking for results. You're maybe doing a health check to see things are working. You could count engines. You could check deployment parameters. You can start to kind of build your tests out here. I don't have any tests running here. I just have the deployment pipeline, but you could have stacked up another script on Azure DevOps that ran after completion that did your tests, or before probably you'd want to do it. Okay, excellent. So let's hop back to the presentation and look for the final step here. And what we want to do now is do our production deployment. So we've done all our testing and staging. What we're going to do now is merge into prod, into master, and then we're going to push on master, and that will deploy to production. So the key thing I want to talk about here is a deployment parameter store and production, because we had the same environment variables in staging and dev, but in production, we have different values. So I'm going to go here to prod, and I'll show you. Let me jump this big again. So in prod, if I go under deployment parameters, I've got different values for the value production, and this one here is pointing to a different web connection. So you don't need to do same naming of web connections anymore. You can call them sensible names in each environment, and then you can have the deployment parameter point to them. Okay, so let's, we're also going to check our status, and I'm going to do git checkout master, and then git merge staging, and then we're going to do git push origin staging. Oh no, master. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So that's going to, if I go to Azure Pipelines, it's going to run my prod workflow here, and it's quite nice. I'll show you. You can actually see the job, and you can see the different parts of the job running, checking out, installing the CLI, logging into Flow, uploading the project, and then posting the job to run. So that project now has been moved up to production, and we don't have to do anything because these deployment parameters are still there, referencing prod and Skytrain. Our project's been updated, our automation's there, our workspace is there, and it's going to reference those deployment parameters. Okay, hopefully that was understandable. I think that's kind of the end of my demo. So what I'm going to do now is stop sharing my screen, and we're going to wrap things up. So yeah, in conclusion there, that was a lot to get through. But I honestly think FME really, it gives you what's needed for your DevOps workflows now. We've got the CLI, we've got deployment parameters, we've got projects that have kind of been supercharged. All the pieces are there now. There is kind of, you know, it's a specific path you need to take to get to kind of utopia, but we do have a lot of resources on the community now that you can walk through. And I really kind of look forward to everyone trying all of this out and giving us feedback and you know, kind of improving things for the future. So yeah, I don't know, did you want to kind of, do you have any closing remarks there, Elizabeth?
Yeah, this is just a quick slide on Safe Software. If you're new to us, just some stats. We work with over 25,000 organizations worldwide and 200,000 users. And we're almost at our 30-year anniversary, actually. That's coming up next month, I believe. So
is it? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and just some resources here. I know, Stuart, you've pulled together some specific on this topic here. So folks definitely download the deck to get access to those. We'll also send out a follow-up email with resources as well. Anything specific on these resources, Stuart?
No, I think the one there's the third one down is a big one because this is kind of a header article that links to like 5 or 6 other articles. So while the Flow documentation is good at listing out what is a deployment parameter and all kind of the reference side of things, the community article is the one that's going to kind of walk you through everything I've talked about.
Okay, perfect. And if you're newer to FME, get our ebook. There's a link there, Spatial Data for the Enterprise. Also check out the FME Academy. It's a great platform to learn about FME. And our knowledge base, community.safe.com/knowledge base, is another great place for how-tos and demos. And then we also have many upcoming webinars. So safe.com/webinars, as well as lots on demand. Some next steps. Contact us if you would like to chat about anything data at all, info@safe.com. And then Experience FME Accelerator. If you're just getting started with FME, this is a great place to start. I took the course myself and found it quite helpful. It's just 90 minutes. And there is a link for that as well here. And claim your community badge. So if you are a part of our FME community, as a thank you for joining us today, we have a code, SCPWF, and I will drop that in the chat as well. If you aren't a part of our FME community, definitely check it out. It's a great place to network with other users and FME experts alike. All right, and we do have 10 minutes remaining for some Q&A here, so I'll get Stuart and I to turn back on our webcams, and we can start to take a look at the questions panel. And I'll also get us, Stuart, to sort at the very top of the questions panel. We can sort by upvotes, and that'll help us prioritize questions here today.
So great. So do you see the FME people being also the DevOps deployment people, or should there be another non-FME person? Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, honestly, I think certainly in larger enterprises, when we've had discussions with people, we're talking to a dedicated DevOps team that are looking to integrate FME into their kind of existing infrastructure. But the thing is FME is very kind of different paradigm to development. So it really needs the FME professional who understands FME Flow and FME Form to work very, very closely. So you always need that FME person to be involved. But yeah, typically I've kind of seen two distinct groups when working with the larger orgs. Okay. What we got here? Follow-up webinar, adding testing to these pipelines would be great. Yeah, okay. I mean, I think we need to produce some content for you on the community around this, so we'll make a note to do that. It does vary how you do things, I guess, based on the DevOps tool you're using, be it Jenkins or Azure, but at the end of the day, most of the time you're running a bash script. And so yeah, some best practices around that is certainly something we can look into. Okay, what else have we got? We've got permissions to parameters on stage and prod, and moving them seems to be a challenge. Okay, so parameters. I think maybe we're talking about deployment parameters here. One thing that we have for this coming is on the quick import screen. Sorry, on the import preview screen, we're actually adding a third tab for .2, which is role. So you'll be able to see all of the things you're importing on this first one. The second one, you'll be able to basically choose not to import the certain things, whatever you don't want to import. And then the third one that we haven't added yet is going to let you say, oh, this doesn't have an owner. Who do you want to be the owner? Because what feedback we had in the past was that another part of the lack of transparency was we just assigned people to own things that we didn't know. If the user wasn't included in the project, then who did we assign that ownership to? Was it the super user? Was it the admin? So in .2, you're actually going to have more visibility into kind of ownership of anything that's unclear. Hopefully that answers your question. I'm not sure it does, but ask another one if it didn't. Okay, let's have a look at Nick. So this is a useful webinar. Great. Will these processes be documented? So yeah, there's a good KB area, as I said. There isn't anything in the academy yet. I am talking to Sam though, so maybe that's something we can look into. Yeah, it's kind of tricky. Like, do we go down the route of a certain vendor? We don't typically do that, so it's kind of, you know, maybe we just do a Git one and we don't look at Azure DevOps or something like that. But that's something for us to think about for sure. Okay, that workspace comparison tool looks cool. How do I use it? It is cool. So what you have to do is in Git settings, like in the actual configuration of Git locally, you have to add in some basically, well, they're basically scripts that are going to call and open the flow compare, the form compare and merge tool. So this is all documented. I think, let me just try it locally, but if you Google form workspace compare and merge, I think I've linked it in the presentation as well. Let me try and find it. Yeah, there's an article here. So I don't know, I can't really, can I just post in the chat there, Elizabeth?
Yeah, absolutely.
Posted in the chat there the link to the article that's been written. So this is your best way to figure out how to use it, and we also link the setup in there as well. Can you talk about how the CLI is used internally in safe dev team or testing? So, you know, the CLI was built for users. So maybe we do use it internally. I haven't had that conversation with the DevOps team as to how they use it. I'm guessing they are using it internally. Obviously, we have a huge automated test suite against Flow running, but a lot of our tests are kind of lower level. We're probably running unit tests and UI tests as well. So I'm not actually sure on that, but I think the team will be excited to use it. But the main thing I would say is I'd love you to use it. I'd love to get feedback on things that are missing. We can easily tweak things. We can add things. It's a work in progress. It's also just on GitHub. It's not tied to the release, so we can just update it. Sigby is there a good way to just accept all changes when comparing workspaces so you don't have to copy bookmarks, etc.? Not sure on that one, actually. I think there's still polish happening on that compare and merge tool, but you saw in my workflow it didn't copy the bookmark, and apparently that's how it was designed. So if maybe that's a piece of feedback I need to take back to the product team there. Let's have a look further down. Since you're using Git, is there a way to use Git diff with FME Flow in a usable manner? It's quite messy to read from terminal. So, I mean, the compare and merge tool would be how to do that. You can use the compare and merge tool on the command line by passing in 2 different parameters. So you don't have to use it in the context of Git. You can just literally open 2 workspaces and compare them. So yeah, I think the answer to that is yeah. Okay, so parameter store. How does Form know what parameters are available for use from Flow and vice versa? Surely there's a connection that needs to be established from one side to start. Right, yeah. So in Form, you're going to enter you're going to enter the Flow username and password. So you're going to enter the Flow username and password, and that username and password you use to connect to Flow with, that's going to dictate which deployment parameters you can see. So deployment parameters have permissions. You can hide and show parameters from certain users. So one user might not see any deployment parameters if they log in with those credentials, whereas another user might see all of them. So you connect, you sync, and then on sync, you'll see them in Form on the left-hand side.
Yeah, might have time for a question or 2 more here before the hour.
Okay, let's have a look. How do you manage to make the compare tool to start automatic after creating the merge conflict? Yeah, so that's it's in the doc. Basically, you have to configure Git. So have a read of that article, but yeah, you need to basically configure Git to open. And what it does is it looks for the .fmw extension when there's a merge conflict, and if it sees the FMW, it opens things. Okay, the final question, a little bit about, is there a timeline for 2023.2 coming out, and are there any changes to FME 23 versus 24? So 23.2 is coming out on December the 5th. Changes between 23 and 24. So we're still coding against 24. We're still making changes right now. One of the big things we're thinking about for 24, firstly, is when you add a repository at the moment, it does not include all the dependencies. It just includes the workspaces. So we've missed that. So give us a thumbs up if you'd like to see that. That would be when you add a repository, it adds the workspaces, and it also adds all the dependencies of those workspaces, packages, connections, deployment parameters. So that's one thing we're looking at. The other thing is we've had some feedback that not being able to exclude dependencies on export is problematic. So you can exclude deployment parameters, web connections, all of those environment-specific types on import, but people have provided feedback that they'd like to be able to, on export of the project, actually exclude the deployment parameter or the web connection or the database connection, so it never goes out in the project. And this is the scenario where the importer and the exporter are different. So if you'd like to see that, give me a thumbs up as well. That's something we can look at adding. This is good for security concerns as well. Obviously, some orgs might not want to include their packages. Lots of thumbs up there as well.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right. Excellent. So I know there's a couple more questions here, and if you still have questions on top of mind, feel free to drop those into the panel. Stuart and I can stay online a couple minutes longer and just keep an eye on that panel and respond to some there. But in the meantime, thank you so much, everyone, for joining and all the amazing questions that you've asked throughout. We really appreciate your time. And big thank you to Stuart as well for all his time on developing this webinar content for us. If you do have a brief moment to fill out our webinar survey, we really appreciate any feedback. I've got the link for that in the chat. Maybe I'll redrop that in so it's at the top there. And yeah, just as a reminder, contact us if you have anything you wish to chat about, info@safe.com to do with data. So thanks everyone so much for your time, and hope you all have a great rest of your day. Bye for now.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, bye, everyone. And feel free to email me at stuart.harper@safe.com if you have any feedback or you see anything that you're really interested in. You could influence development at this point. As I say, we are coding for 2024. So thanks, everyone.
Awesome.